Okay, so you've sung the music. Do 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 do. You've said, I feel like I'm in the Twilight Zone. We all have. But imagine, if you will, there's more to take away from this timeless TV series. Mark Dawidziak has some suggestions. Mark is the television critic for the Cleveland Plain Dealer and the author of many books, including his latest, Everything I Need to Know I Learned in the Twilight Zone. So, all right, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me back.
You said there's lessons to be learned from the writings of Rod Serling. You kind of discovered this, or rediscovered it, I guess, by watching shows with your daughter, right?
Yeah, sometimes things are hiding in plain sight. You know, I watched The Twilight Zone as a kid, like most people first did, and I watched it and for the same reason everybody did when they're kids, for that nice spooky feeling you get at the end when the hairs in the back of your neck go up with the little twist endings. And
right.
That was, I mean, that's why I watched The Twilight Zone, and I was about 10 years old. And then, you know, as I got older, I kind of realized there's more going on here than just these kind of twist endings. Each one, this is parable storytelling.
Okay.
Rod Serling was using The Twilight Zone to put across lessons and parables, using, where have we heard that before? When have we heard that? Well, it goes all the way back to Aesop's fables. And the idea that every Aesop's fable ends the same way a Twilight Zone episode ends, with the unspoken words, and the moral is. So you walked away from the Twilight Zone with a life lesson. And when I was sharing this with my daughter, when she turned 15, she'd already seen a lot of classic TV. She loved classic TV. She watched I Love Lucy. She watched the Dick Van Dyke Show. She watched the Andy Griffith Show. And after, when she was about to turn 15, I said, all right, you know, you have finished your undergraduate work in classic television. You know, it's time for you to start your postgraduate work. It's time for you to get serious. It's time for you to enter the Twilight Zone.
Okay.
And we started a forced march to the Twilight Zone. And we got to an episode called Escape Clause. And this is the one where David Wayne plays a hypochondriac who sells his soul to the devil in exchange for immortality. And anybody who has ever seen an episode of The Twilight Zone knows this is not going to end well for David Wayne. But when the episode was over, I kind of jokingly turned to my daughter and I wagged a playful finger and I said, now you just let that be a lesson to you. Always read contracts. Always read through every clause. Don't sign anything unless you know what you're signing.
Right.
You know, and I was kidding, but you know, after a while, I kind of thought about 2008, the mortgage crisis, and how many people signed contracts not knowing what they were signing. And I turned back to her and said, no, really, I mean this. I'm serious. And so this became a running gag, because I can run a gag into the ground with the best of them. And we got to the end of every episode, and I say, let that be a lesson to you. And I'm a slow learner. After a few weeks, I kind of went, you've got a book on your hands, stupid. You know, all you have to do is sort of extract these lessons from these episodes and put them in the book. So there are 50 life lessons.
Okay.
And
but, I mean, he always used aliens and outer space and stuff. So why did he do that instead of just everyday life lessons?
Well, you have to understand, you know, there's a famous quote that always gets misused by F. Scott Fitzgerald, that there are no second acts in American lives. It's nonsense. There's second acts all the time. We're a nation of second acts. We love second acts. And for Rod Serling, The Twilight Zone was the second act. He had started in the early 50s as one of the young lions of live television, writing for the great anthology shows like Playhouse 90 and Kraft and the U.S. Steel Hour. And in the beginning, TV was like the Wild West. They were making it up as they went along. At the end of the 50s, it's nothing but rules. And everybody's turning to him and saying, you can't say this, you can't show that, the sponsor will get upset if you do this, those stations will get upset. So he fled into the Twilight Zone as a way to get the message across. His themes don't change. His messages don't change. There's a wonderful interview with Mike Wallace. Mike Wallace, 60 Minutes fame, and it was right before the Twilight Zone aired. And you can see it on YouTube. And they're both smoking away like you know, smokestacks. And Wallace, with this typical smirky look on his face, says to him, well, you're doing this thing called the Twilight Zone. I guess we can assume you're done with serious writing. And the camera comes in on Rod, and he's got this smile on his face because he knows he's about to put one over on him. He knows he's about to put, but the magician can't reveal the trick. So he basically says, yes, Mike, I'm done with serious writing, knowing he's not at all. He understood that if you surround the message with aliens and spaceships and fantasy and horror, nobody's going to raise an eyebrow. And he was absolutely right. He didn't change anything. He was still writing about war and bigotry and prejudice and ignorance. He was still writing about the same themes. And all he did was change the delivery system.
I got to read the book. Everything I needed to know I learned from the Twilight Zone. It's kind of a self-help book, but from another dimension. You can purchase a copy for yourself at local bookstores or on Amazon. My thanks to Mark for sharing these life lessons that continue to stand the test of time.
To learn more about this book or Mary's many others, click to www.markdawidziak.com.